Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm Keith Ritchie, Director of Global Marketing here at LinkedIn, and I'm going to talk today about how you can get more out of LinkedIn by sharing tips from my team and how we're using LinkedIn for our marketing. So very glad that you could join me today, and I'm ready to get rolling. First, I wanted to give you a preview of what I'll be talking about. So I'll share the tips for how we're using the platform, LinkedIn, across these 5 marketing objectives. And I've selected these 5 objectives because, I figure at least one of these objectives will be relevant to everyone. And many of you have more than one of these objectives as part of your area of responsibility. And in fact, you may have all 5 of them as we do. So this is a good representative mix of objectives, covers a wide spectrum. And I want to talk specifically about each one and how LinkedIn is helping us meet those objectives. But before I do that, I want to spend a little bit of time up front here setting the stage and talking about the evolution of LinkedIn and how we've evolved into a knowledge platform. So this may not be how LinkedIn was thought of even 5 years ago, or certainly when it was founded. It may not. Being a knowledge platform is not necessarily the perception that LinkedIn had back then. And if you look back at our website in 2010, 5 years ago, it looked very different. It had a much bigger focus on the connections and job opportunities. And content was there, and therefore the opportunity to gain knowledge, but it wasn't as prominent as it's become. And since that time, since the 2009, 2010 era, our members have grown significantly. So we had 32 million members back in 2009, and now we have more than 400 million today. And a big part of why the member base has grown as it has is the fact that there's now a vast amount of knowledge on the platform, and that's made LinkedIn the definitive professional publishing platform. So there's knowledge that's coming from brands who are sharing via their company pages and the company updates that are coming from those pages. From the slide shares that brands are publishing, there are now over 18 million slide shares that have been published. And brands obviously have a huge role to play on LinkedIn, and that's what I'm going to be talking about the rest of the session. There's also now, in 2015, more than ever before, many other sources of really high-quality content and knowledge that are feeding the platform, coming from thought leaders like Richard Branson, where we've handpicked over 500 leading luminaries in business to contribute original content in the form of long-form posts to LinkedIn. News, coming from over 2 million publishers that have enabled sharing into LinkedIn with the InShare button, for example. Peers, so your network, obviously sharing a lot of content. There's now the opportunity for every member that has an English-speaking setting to publish, and we'll obviously be expanding that beyond English. But every one of those members currently has the ability to publish content on LinkedIn using our self-publishing tool and to write original content, long form, and post it. And so there are now over 130,000 of those types of posts per week, and that number is climbing every week. And in the middle of this year, we bought Lynda, the education company, and so there are over 270,000 Lynda videos on every range of conceivable topics that you could want to gain knowledge on. And so here in 2015, there's just a tremendous amount of knowledge on the platform, and a lot of it takes the shape of content in the feed. And so here's an example of, from a brand, from Adobe, content that they shared into the feed targeting professionals on LinkedIn and using our Sponsored Updates product to do that. I'm going to talk more in a minute about Sponsored Updates and how we're using it. Here's an example from how Adobe is using it. They've created an update and they publish it once, and it seamlessly crosses devices. So the same update appears in the feed in a native way, native advertising, on the desktop there on the left, on the tablet in the middle, and on the smartphone on the far right-hand side. And it's something where, like I said, it's seamless across those devices. So as a marketer, Adobe has to publish that update once, and then it'll reformat itself to fit into the different frames on the different devices. And in this way, content has really become the centerpiece of the platform and how our members are consuming the information on LinkedIn, and it's also become a centerpiece for brands to engage with our members. And content's really important because of this challenge that we see as marketers here at LinkedIn, and we feel like this is a fairly universal challenge. A lot of you probably feel similarly. It's a challenging world now to reach your buyer, and that's whether they're a B2C buyer or a B2B buyer. And that's because research has shown, in particular for B2B, but this trend holds across B2C as well, that buyers are up to 90% of the way through their purchase journey before they reach out directly to engage in a conversation with someone at the brand. So if you're buying a car, you might do 90% of the research and be 90% of the way to the decision now before you reach out and go on the lot and talk to a salesperson. Same dynamic in B2B, you might be 90% of the way through a purchase decision about media or about software before you reach out directly to talk to a salesperson. And that obviously means it's harder as a marketer now to influence the decision because you have the buyer coming much later in the process once they're already pretty well decided what they're going to do, and it's harder to influence the outcome once they're approaching the brand. You really need to be able to influence the outcome in this first 90% of the journey, but without them reaching out directly, that presents a challenge. Now the solution actually is in the form of content. So a study from Google shows that 10 pieces of content are consumed before a purchasing decision is made. And so this is exactly how marketers are able to influence the decision and influence the journey before that buyer reaches out directly. So while you're in that first 90% of the journey, sharing content is how you're going to make it onto the short list when they're ready to reach out in the last 10%. So to reinforce the point, relevant content is the answer for overcoming that dynamic where the buyer is really in control and they're not reaching out until very late in the journey. And so we've seen a similar dynamic, and we've seen a lot of advantages and a lot of upside from using content and from using content on LinkedIn. So I'll be talking more about that in just a minute. I wanted to also make sure everyone on the call had a good understanding of the products that LinkedIn offers for marketers. And so that's what you see here on this slide. Every stage of your marketing funnel, which everyone has a different definition of their funnel and their stages, but when you boil it down, you're trying to reach the right audience and then nurture them until they buy. And so we've evaluated, all kinds of different funnel shapes and sizes. Is it an infinite loop? Is it a cloud? Is it still a traditional funnel? And we've determined that, it simplifies it to think of it in these two stages that yield the right outcome of acquiring new customers. You're trying to reach the right people and then nurture them. And our product portfolio works through the funnel. So you look on the far right-hand side of the slide and see that our upper funnel products, on-site display and network display, they're working in that reach phase. They're helping you reach the right target and raise awareness of your product and service or change perception of your product and service. And then you move into the middle of the funnel where sponsored updates really can serve both purposes. It's a great reach product. It's also good for shifting perception, and I'll talk to how we're using it to do that. But then you can drive leads with it as well, and that's something I'll also touch on. Moving down one level further, you have our replacement for email, sponsored InMail. So this gets around the dynamic where people are opening fewer and fewer emails and inboxes are getting more and more cluttered. Sponsored InMail is premium placement on the LinkedIn platform, and therefore gets much higher open rates and click-through rates. And that's a great product for nurturing leads and driving those acquisitions. And then finally, Lead Accelerator. It's a real bottom funnel product. It's all about driving more quality leads faster to your sales team. And I'll be speaking through examples of how we're using Lead Accelerator to do just that. So before we move on, I just want to also point out that there's this little gray dotted line over on the left-hand side of the funnel, full funnel analytics and reporting. That's a capability that LinkedIn provides the marketers using our platform. And so you can look at how your campaigns are performing and get the analytics on how you're doing on reach and nurture across these products. So that's important for us because we look at these 4 core success metrics. We look at the quality traffic that we're driving to our properties from LinkedIn. We look at the engagement that we're getting in our campaigns so that we can optimize them. And then we're measuring on our side how we are driving qualified leads. That's what the MQLs stand for, marketing qualified leads. And ultimately how those are translating into pipeline and revenue for our audience. For our sales team, pipeline and revenue from the audience that we're trying to reach. So I'll talk at the end about how we've driven those metrics. So now I'll dive deep, and for the rest of the webcast here, I'll be exploring these different objectives and how we're using LinkedIn to achieve them. And we'll start with generating awareness. So here's a campaign that we ran on LinkedIn to reach new audiences and make them aware of, on the left-hand side, this purple ad that was about promoting sponsored updates. So we were driving awareness of a specific product. And then on the right-hand side, this was to drive general awareness for LinkedIn Marketing Solutions overall as a way to guide every phase of the marketer's journey and, every phase of the buyer's journey as a marketer, to make sure that your campaigns were working against every phase of the journey. And LinkedIn Marketing Solutions has, as I just mentioned, those full funnel capabilities. So in both of these cases, we wanted to use marketing on LinkedIn to help reach the right audience for us and raise the awareness of that audience for how they could use LinkedIn to achieve their objectives. And the first product we turned to was on-site display, where now you're able to reach and engage more than the number is actually 400 million. And there's more than 400 million professionals on LinkedIn, and you can reach and engage them through on-site display very accurately. So our targeting is based on first-party data. People are reporting their and uploading their titles, the companies they work for. They're adding all of that information to their profiles, and then it's authenticated by their peer network. So very, very accurate data. The on-site display is appearing, as you can see here, in the high-quality professional context in a variety of different formats. So we have a lot of different display options, and I'll share a few of those in a little bit. The other display product that we offer is network display, and this gives you the same targeting, the same highly accurate targeting that you get with on-site display, but takes it actually off the LinkedIn platform to a network of thousands of other publishers and other websites where our members are traveling. So you can still target LinkedIn members, but you're getting really broad reach. And you can scale your target across the web wherever they're going. So you're reaching the people you want to reach wherever they're traveling on the web. And LinkedIn Network Display also comes with a analytics capability where you can measure how many new visitors, for instance, that you've introduced to your website as a result of the traffic you're reaching on network display and the proportion of that traffic that you're driving to your site. So you can measure the impact in terms of new people that you've introduced to your web destinations by targeting on LinkedIn Network Display. And here's an example of how we're using Network Display. This is a different campaign, also promoting LinkedIn Marketing Solutions overall. And we used all of the IAB ad units to maximize our performance and really optimize the mix according to which units were performing the best. For this, it varies by campaign. And this gave us that extended reach across the web, not just on the LinkedIn platform. So the second objective I'm going to talk about is building thought leadership. After you've generated awareness, you probably want to create the right perceptions in the mind of your target, and thought leadership is a great way of doing that. Again, primarily in a B2B case, but there's also some thought leadership content use cases for high consideration B2C marketers like automotive, luxury, travel, that sort of thing. So for us, thought leadership boils down to content. In order to be a thought leader, you have to be able to express those thoughts in the form of content, and content powers a lot of our other experiences. So we're bringing our content to events, we're capturing content at events. Here I'm talking about larger physical events in person. Our content is powering a lot of our campaigns, and we're also using content to fuel our social and online channels. So you're probably thinking, okay, we're hearing a lot about content. We know content marketing is a big trend. We just need to do more content. Well, if you're doing no content, more content's a good idea. But it's actually more about relevant content, not just more content. And that's something where, our team has spent a considerable amount of time assessing the trends that our marketing audience is interested in and the hot topics of both today and tomorrow, and we're building content around those themes. So another way of making content relevant is by making it visual, and this picture is of a cat with bacon in outer space. The cat's sort of like riding on a magic carpet of bacon, and that's obviously a highly relevant visual because everyone loves kittens and cats, and on the internet especially. Even if you're a dog person, I'm sure you've watched some cat videos and some sleepy kitten videos on YouTube. And then bacon is also massively popular. So this is a great illustration of the point that a visual can be very captivating, and obviously the cat and bacon is kind of a joke, but the point remains that visual content can grab a hold of people in the way that written content can't. And it's not to say that you shouldn't be doing written. You need a balance of both. But making sure your content is conveying its points with high-impact visuals is key. And so here's an example of a piece of content we generated. We themed it with sort of this mid-century Mad Men style, and we used a topic of how to market on LinkedIn as the bedrock for this big rock. So we call large pieces of content big rocks because they're very heavyweight. They can be something that sustains a conversation for a long period of time. So it's like a big rock as opposed to like a little grain of sand or a pebble. And we elected to create this piece of content around the theme of how can I use LinkedIn to market in a more sophisticated way, because we saw a lot of search activity in Google around people looking for tips and tricks on how to market on LinkedIn. And many other companies had added their voice. So, agencies and social media management companies, they had created guides to using LinkedIn for marketing. And we hadn't yet crafted that sort of definitive guide to how to use LinkedIn for marketing, coming from our expert voice as the marketers at LinkedIn. And so we were leaving the door open for other companies to add their voice to that conversation, which they absolutely should, but it definitely showed that there was a real thirst for this topic, and that, by not being present in that conversation, we were missing a huge opportunity. So we created this Sophisticated Marketers Guide and then extended the mileage by carving it up. So we carved up that one big rock into a number of what we call turkey slices, like imagining a Thanksgiving turkey and you have leftovers that feed your family for days afterward. And that's the point of creating these turkey slices, is to generate more value out of that one big rock and also to help promote the big rock. So the idea, and I'll get into this when I talk about generating leads, the idea is that you also use these turkey slices to point back to the main big rock. So you can publish an infographic on the blog, and that gives someone a very digestible way to get into the topic, and then a certain percentage of people who read that post are going to want to see the full report or the full guide, and the infographic can point back to that. So we've used all of these different formats as turkey slices for the Sophisticated Marketer's Guide. And a lot of this content is flowing through our showcase page. So on LinkedIn, a lot of you are probably familiar with the fact that you can create a company page, and that's the public presence for your company on LinkedIn. And we've also enabled for the last couple of years the creation of showcase pages, which are connected to the main company page, but they exist to promote specific business units within the company or specific initiatives. So if you have a particular segment of the company that has its own unique voice and its own unique target audience, it's a good idea to create a showcase page. So LinkedIn has a company page, and then LinkedIn Marketing Solutions, our business unit, has a showcase page. And so this is the screenshot there, and you can see how the sort of hero image works to set up the fact that at LinkedIn Marketing Solutions, our goal is to inspire marketers. And we've actually updated it since this screenshot was taken, so you can go take a look at the new one. But from the showcase page, we're able to publish updates from our page and then sponsor them as well. And so sponsoring the updates is what's giving us a lot of additional reach, and we're ultimately able to turn these into leads. I'll speak more about driving leads when I get to that objective specifically, but didn't want to pass this slide without calling that out. And so with a sponsored update, you're able to reach the organic traffic that you're getting from people who are following your showcase page or your company page, and then you're able to add fuel to the fire by increasing your reach and sponsoring to reach a target that's not currently following your page. So this is especially important if you're a small company and you haven't had the time yet to amass a large followership. You can reach people with content on LinkedIn even if they're not following your page by sponsoring that content. And you're getting the same quality professionals who are on LinkedIn. That is the set of people that you're able to target. And as I mentioned in that earlier Adobe example, the sponsored updates carries across the feed seamlessly on any device. And so that's what this that image illustrates. The other thing that we found is sponsored updates paired up with on-site display is driving proportionally more leads for us than if we were just using either product in isolation. And so you see here two examples. We had a chapter, or rather a new edition of the Sophisticated Marketer's Guide that was all around thought leadership. So it was the Sophisticated Marketer's Guide to Thought Leadership. We promoted it with the on-site display unit, which is that square, and then behind that square is a turkey slice from that guide that we promoted on sponsored updates. And so together they both drove back to the original Sophisticated Marketer's Guide to Thought Leadership, and we were capturing leads by having that piece be behind a gate, and from driving them here, we were able to, driving our target audience from here, we were able to capture those leads. And we were able to capture more by using the sponsored updates in combination with the display. Same example there on the right-hand side with an ebook about hybrid marketers and how to become one. And so you'll see on with the display unit, we have on the left our standard 300 by 250, and on the right, this is a spotlight ad where it actually pulls in the member profile picture that you're targeting and talks about, like, specifically addresses them with a message that's more personal. And so spotlight ads are great when you're delivering that sort of personal connection. So overall for sponsored updates, these are the best practices that we've drawn. I mentioned how visual is the new headline, so making sure your content is visual and making sure you have a visual in your sponsored update. So always adding that additional visual element. Keep your updates short and sweet and digestible, because remember, people are scrolling through their feed and you want to make sure whatever you're talking about can grab them quickly. And that's the same reason that this third point is here. Snackable stats are really powerful. You'll see a couple examples later where we've used statistics to really highlight a key takeaway and an insight in a way that's going to get people's attention in the feed. And then making sure you have a variety of content. So not always promoting the same content, not always talking about the exact same theme, and making sure that you're varying your subject matter so that if something's resonating for one of your target segments but not for others, that you have an opportunity to speak to all of them, but then also making sure you're varying your approach and varying your content so that you can test and optimize what works best. So I want to shift gears and talk about the objective of launching a product and how we're using LinkedIn to introduce new products. So I'll give you the example of the product that we launched earlier this year, LinkedIn Lead Accelerator, and we used multiple channels in order to launch it. So the blue channels here are channels on LinkedIn, and then we had our owned channels, our blogs, social feeds, webcasts, and email as other channels. All of the traffic that we were generating through promoting and launching Lead Accelerator drove to a landing page we created for the product. And then people were converting through the landing page by saying, hey, I'm interested in learning more. Please, I'd like to have a conversation with someone from LinkedIn. And that went to our sales dev team who followed up with the leads. So that's the overall view of that campaign. We used sponsored updates a lot, and I just spent a little while talking about that product. So I'm going to talk now about an additional feature of sponsored updates, which is direct sponsored content. Direct sponsored content gives you the ability to publish content and promote it to specific audiences without the content appearing on your company page. So the advantage here is if you want to personalize your content and send, let's say, a specific intro to customers in one segment and a different intro to customers in a different segment, you can target both populations and sponsor the content using direct sponsored content, not have it appear on your company page so that the followers of your company page aren't seeing both updates. In fact, they're seeing neither. If you want to publish something to your followers, you still can through the company page, but direct sponsored content gives you the ability to not publish on the company page. Another reason to do this would be if you wanted to A/B test or even multivariate test some updates in order to optimize to the one that works best before sending it to a broader target. You probably don't want every test to appear on your company page for people who are following it or visiting the page. And so direct sponsored content gives you the ability to control that as well. And so we were able to test, A/B test some creative with sponsored updates using direct sponsored content. And so the first test I'll show you is we ran we ran an image test, and we had an image of the funnel on the right-hand side versus an image of marketer on the left-hand side. And other than that, the update was the same. So we had the same headline, and it clicked through to a landing page. And then we had the same underlying article that we were sharing. And so the funnel actually won in this case, because I think our hypothesis is that it performed better in the test because it was more of a unique image to see in the feed. And obviously marketers are quite familiar with the concept of the funnel, and so there was definitely a degree of familiarity there. So we thought that test was interesting. We wanted to keep testing using direct sponsored content. And so here's an example of another A/B test when we were launching Lead Accelerator again. And we tested different combinations of quotes and stats. And And so we were able to optimize the right mix from five quotes and 5 stats. And here is the quote that performed the best and the stat that performed the best. So then we were able to put more of our impressions behind the best performing direct sponsored content updates. So that's a good segue into how we're using LinkedIn to drive leads, because we're doing a lot of A/B testing to optimize our approach. And content is really at the heart of how we're driving leads. So content makes up about 70% of the leads that we're generating. It's responsible for generating about 70% of our leads in this business. And so we're very big believers in content and using it to drive leads. And so this is a schematic of how it works. I mentioned before, you have the big rock, and then you've got the various turkey slices that are the spin-offs of that big rock. And so, like the infographic version, the podcast version, a shorter ebook that has the 10 expert tips from the big rock, but we've broken it out separately as a 10 tips guide. And all those turkey slices lead to the big rock, which is gated, and so we're capturing lead information off of that. And then we're sending those leads through the rest of the qualification process. So if a lead is a marketing qualified lead, then we send it through to the sales dev team. They further qualify it. It goes into the hands of the sales team, and then ultimately converts or does not convert. And then if a lead comes in from the big rock and it's not an MQL, it is not qualified, then we'll put it into a nurture program. And we're using LLA for a lot of our nurtures. So I'll share the example there on how we're using LLA to nurture in a little bit. But this way we're not, just making one decision about is a lead qualified and having that decision stick forever. We're using nurturing to make sure that leads are hearing from LinkedIn and that we can stay top of mind. So about 70% of our budget we're putting on things that are driving leads, and then 30% is going to things that are driving awareness and perception of LinkedIn. So we've definitely shifted our mix over time so that we're more focused on driving leads. Now, the final product in our portfolio in terms of placement in the funnel is the lower funnel LinkedIn Lead Accelerator product. And as I mentioned, we're doing a lot to nurture leads that aren't converting. And so that's what Lead Accelerator enables you to do. So on any given website, there's at least 95% in most cases of the visitors to that site who are not providing email. And so you can't communicate with them because you don't know who they are. And then further, even if you do know who they are and you get their email, then about 80% of people aren't opening emails, right? Because email open rates are pretty fixed around 20%. Obviously, it depends on your business and your objective, and are you emailing customers or prospects, but for prospect emails, the open rates aren't that high. So essentially, you combine these two numbers together, and you're really getting only about 1% of the total website visitors who you're able to know anything about. And so Lead Accelerator is the remedy to that, because you're taking visitors to your website who are not providing information, but you're able to retarget them using Lead Accelerator and nurture them in this intelligent way by setting up various nurture streams to pay off what you know about those individuals. So, for example, the way we're using Lead Accelerator is we identify the audiences that we want to nurture. So we have people who are coming to our website and bouncing on the home page. Well, we can assume that they're really far up the funnel, and they're just really dipping a toe in, and we need to nurture them with a sequence of Lead Accelerator ads that are going to help bring them through that journey and turn their awareness into consideration and ultimately to purchase. Whereas a website visitor that's looking at our case studies and really deeply evaluating them, that's a different degree of connection with marketing solutions, and that's a different scenario. So we have a different sequence of ads in Lead Accelerator that we're sending them. So the first step is identifying the audiences. Second step is sequencing the ads you're going to show them. This will enable you to increase conversions of the traffic that before was coming to your website and not filling in forms, and you're not really able to know anything about them. All of the tracking that Lead Accelerator enables helps marketers optimize their creatives, and then also the reporting is how you're able to measure the impact of your program, which then further helps you optimize. And then you start that cycle again by understanding the audiences you're currently reaching and how to better reach them, and then potentially identifying new audiences to reach. And so here's what it looks like laid out in a sort of campaign format, where we have the various Lead Accelerator streams aligned by the different segments. So you have people who are really engaged, like I said, looking at a lot of content, and then people who are bouncing on the home page versus people who are looking at the sponsored updates product in depth. And so the different streams can be set up to pay off the different behavior. And it also, because of the analytics, you're able to do some really interesting testing of the creative to optimize what works. And so Lead Accelerator works, like a lot of other Lead Accelerator enables you to use a lot of other ad formats. So you can use the ad formats from LinkedIn display, you can use ad formats on network display, and you're able to use other social ads in the feed. And this is an example of the 300 by 250 test that we did, and we saw really good impressions per action, so good performance with Lead Accelerator from these two different ads. So we tested an array, and these are the ones that were performing the best in the different streams. What we saw was a clear title driving registration for this webcast on the left with a clear call to action helped enhance the performance of this campaign. And by the way, when I say impressions per actions, that's how many people who are seeing the ad, the impressions, are taking the action that you're intending. And so how many impressions does it take to generate that registration action? And so anything less than 10,000 impressions per action is a really good benchmark. So here we're at around 1,300, 1,600 impressions per action. That's far less than 10,000. So we definitely like the performance of these two creative units in the nurture streams for LLA. And on the right-hand side, it's a colorful unit and offers more contrast than a lot of ads, and obviously has a clear call to action as well to download the ebook. Here's a comparison where we did a very, very rigid sort of A/B test, and we changed very little about the units from A to B, except the graphic and the color. And so we saw almost almost twice the performance, twice as good performance with the red unit than the blue unit. And we think that's because the image is clearer and easier to make out, and because red stands out more, whereas LinkedIn, typically our color palette, is blue, and so red was something a little unexpected coming from LinkedIn. And so that wraps up the driving leads portion. And you could consider event promotion to be driving leads, because a lot of webcasts and physical events, the people who attend count as leads for sales, and that's how a lot of marketers are using both webcasts and events. So I know that's a really common way of driving leads. The prior section talked more about content, so I want to spend a few minutes talking about events here and how we're promoting them. So I'll give you a specific story here. We had an event back in May called Finance Connect. It was in New York City. We invited people in that area to come and attend. And for people around the country who couldn't make it to New York, we invited them onto our live stream. And we were promoting registration for Finance Connect, the stream. We found that email, our traditional email channel, wasn't providing the performance that we were looking for, and so our registration numbers were light. and the event was approaching. We wanted to make sure as many people as possible had the opportunity to attend, and so we plugged in sponsored InMail, the alternative to email, and that enabled us to reach new prospects who are not in our email database, because we're able to use all the LinkedIn targeting to get to marketers that we don't currently have in our database. And the other thing I'll mention about InMail is it's been optimized for delivery and for mobile consumption. And so when I say optimized for delivery, InMail only delivers into the LinkedIn inbox when the LinkedIn member is active on the platform. So InMails aren't piling up when they're not logged in. Sponsored InMails are only arriving first once every 60 days. So each individual member can only get a sponsored InMail once every 60 days. And on top of that, they're only delivered when the member is active. So you get 100% delivery, you get people who are active on the platform, and then it's optimized for mobile. So the screenshot here on the right is the mobile device. You see the call to action down at the bottom. It says not interested on the left in gray, and then learn more in blue on the right. And so as the LinkedIn member is scrolling through their phone and reading the message, that call to action stays persistent as they scroll. And so it's driving significantly more click-through rate than you would see normally with an email. And so I'll talk to that example. So here's the invitation to Finance Connect, the live stream in a traditional email, 24% open rate, 0.74% click-through rate. So pretty standard prospect email performance. And then we sent a sponsored InMail to help boost registration. We saw a tremendous uplift. So over 8 times of an increase in the click-through rate and almost double the increase in the open rate. And so here's where you see both dynamics at play. The dynamic delivery, where that helps drive up open rate because people only receive an InMail, sponsored InMail, when they're active on the platform. And then the optimized for mobile with the call to action, generating that much higher click-through rate. And so as a result, we saw InMail really outperform email driving reg. So one InMail created more registration than 2 different emails did. Almost half of our registration for that live stream event came from InMail. So again, very pleased with that performance. So I wanted to wrap it up and then take a few questions. For us, again, it boils down to how we're measuring success, quality traffic and engagement in the reach phase. Then when we're nurturing, we look at MQLs and the pipeline that we're generating for the business. And so together, across our marketing mix, where marketing on LinkedIn is the most prominent part of it, we're driving quality traffic. So 72% of the visitors to our site are Manager Plus. So that's the right seniority for the people we're targeting. We get a lot of engagement through content and through the traffic that we're